Welcome back to Mindset English, my friends. Today, I want to take you on a powerful journey, one that could completely change the way you think about life, money, and success. What I'm about to share with you is not just a story, it's a lesson, a mindset shift that has transformed millions of lives worldwide, including my own. This lesson comes from one of the most influential books ever written on achieving financial freedom. Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Picture yourself, as a young boy or girl growing up in a world full of advice. You watch the adults around you, listening carefully to what they say about money. But what you hear is confusing. One voice tells you to work hard, study well, get a good job, save money, and live a responsible life. Another voice says, learn how money works, make it work for you, and build wealth. Two completely opposite messages. Which path would you choose? This was the reality for Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He had two father figures in his life, two men who taught him very different lessons about money, work, and success. He called them his poor dad and his rich dad. His poor dad was his biological father, a well-educated man with a stable job as a school teacher. Poor Dad strongly believed that education and hard work would lead to success. He thought the key to a good life was to get excellent grades, secure a steady job with benefits, and climb the corporate ladder. He valued job security, pensions, and saving money for the future. But despite his education and good intentions, Poor Dad struggled financially. He lived paycheck to paycheck, worried constantly about bills and debts. He often said things like, "Money doesn't grow on trees," or talking about money is impolite. For Poor Dad, money was a source of stress and fear. On the other hand, Rich Dad was the father of Robert's best friend. Unlike Poor Dad, Rich Dad didn't have a college degree or a government job. He wasn't formally educated in the traditional sense. But what he lacked in degrees, he made up for in financial knowledge and practical wisdom. Rich Dad owned businesses, invested in real estate, and understood the power of money better than anyone Robert had ever met. His core belief was this: financial education is more important than formal education. He always said, "You don't work for money, you make money work for you." Imagine being young Robert, caught in the middle of these two conflicting worlds. Both men offered advice, but their messages were completely different. Poor Dad said, "Get a good job and be secure." Rich Dad said, "Create jobs and build a wealth." Poor Dad warned, "Money is the root of all evil." Rich Dad argued, "The lack of money is the root of all evil." Robert was confused but curious. He loved both father figures and respected their wisdom. Yet, he began noticing a pattern. Poor Dad, despite his education, was always stressed about money, worried about the future, and fearful of taking financial risks. Rich Dad, though less formally educated, was calm, confident, and hopeful about his financial future. One day, Robert asked Rich Dad the question that would change everything. "Why are you so confident about money?" Rich Dad smiled and replied, "Because I understand how it works. Most people don't. They work hard all their lives for money but never learn how to make it work for them." That one sentence planted a powerful seed in Robert's mind, a seed of curiosity and hope. He decided to learn from Rich Dad, to discover the secrets to financial success that many people never teach. This was the beginning of his journey to understanding money, not as something to be feared or avoided, but as a tool to create freedom. Let's stop here for a moment and think. How many of us grew up hearing the same advice as Robert did from his poor dad? Go to school, get a good job, save your money, and be responsible. But how many of us were ever truly taught how money works? How to grow it? How to escape the never-ending cycle of working just to pay bills? Your mindset about money shapes your future more than you realize. If you see money as something scary, evil, or impossible to manage, you will struggle with it forever. But if you understand that money is simply a tool you can control and grow, you open the door to new possibilities. Imagine yourself standing at a crossroads. One path leads to financial struggle, stress, and a lifetime of worry. The other path leads to financial freedom, confidence, and peace of mind. Wouldn't you want to know which way to go? This is the exact lesson Robert started to discover. With every conversation and lesson from Rich Dad, Robert's understanding of money expanded. One idea stood out the most. The rich don't work for money. Robert was puzzled. What do you mean? Isn't money the reason people work? Rich Dad smiled knowingly. No, Robert. The poor and middle class work for money. The rich make money work for them. That's the key difference. Rich Dad explained how most people get caught in what he called the rat race, a cycle of endless work and expenses. When you're young, you go to school and are taught to study hard to get a good job. Once you land that job, you work hard to earn money. With that money, you buy things: a house, a car, a new phone. But all those things come with bills, mortgages, loans, taxes, maintenance, so you end up working even harder just to cover these expenses. The cycle never ends. People think they're working for financial security, Rich Dad said, but really they're working for their boss, the government, and the bank. The more they work, the deeper they get trapped. He gave Robert a simple example. Imagine a man named John who earns $3,000 a month. When John gets a raise to $4,000, what does he do? He buys a bigger house, a nicer car, or the latest gadgets. His expenses rise along with his income. Instead of saving or investing, John spends more. Now John must work even harder to pay for these new expenses. This cycle traps him forever. Robert saw this was exactly what his poor dad was doing. Then Rich Dad asked, "Do you know what financial freedom means?" Robert shook his head. Financial freedom means having enough income from your investments or assets to cover your living expenses Rich Dad explained. When you reach that point, you don't have to work unless you want to. Your money works for you. Rich Dad warned that many people think being rich means earning a big salary, but that's not true wealth. Even a high income can disappear if your expenses are too high. Real wealth comes from owning assets that generate income, not just from a paycheck. He then shared a powerful lesson about assets and liabilities. An asset puts money into your pocket, even when you're not working. A liability takes money out of your pocket. For example, a young man saves $10,000 and buys a car. The car needs gas, maintenance, insurance, and it loses value over time. This is a liability because it costs money. Another man saves the same $10,000 and buys a small piece of land. He rents it out for $200 a month. Over time, the land's value increases, and it continues to generate income. This is an asset because it puts money into his pocket. Robert was amazed to learn how often people confuse liabilities for assets. A house, car, or expensive clothes might feel like wealth, but don't generate income. They cost money. Rich Dad said the rich buy assets first. They invest in businesses, real estate, stocks, and education to grow their skills. These investments create passive income. Once they have enough assets, they can afford luxuries without money worries. To clarify, Rich Dad gave an example of two families both earning $5,000 a month. Family A spends all their money on rent, food, and entertainment. They end each month with nothing left. Family B spends $4,000 but invests $1,000 in stocks. Over time, their investments grow, and they start earning $500 a month in dividends. Eventually, this passive income covers their expenses. Family B becomes financially free, while Family A remains stuck in the rat race. Robert realized that wealth isn't about how much you earn, but how you manage what you have. Rich Dad also taught Robert an important mindset shift. Most people say, "I can't afford it." The rich ask, "How can I afford it?" This small change in thinking makes a huge difference. When you say, "I can't afford it," your brain shuts down. But when you ask, "How can I afford it?" your brain starts looking for solutions. Rich Dad gave Robert a task. Whenever you want something but think you can't afford it, write down 3 ways you could make it happen. Maybe cut expenses, start a side hustle, or learn a new skill that pays better. This exercise trains your brain to think like the rich. Robert was still hesitant about investing. "What if I lose my money?" he asked. Rich Dad smiled. That's the difference between the rich and the poor. The poor fear losing money and never take risks. The rich know failure is part of learning. If you fail, you don't give up. You learn and try again. Finally, Rich Dad shared a simple plan to build wealth, even with little money. First, track your expenses carefully for a month. Write down everything you spend and find areas you can cut. Second, start small. Begin investing in stocks or savings accounts with interest. Third, learn every day. Read books, attend seminars, or find mentors who teach you about money. Fourth, focus on buying assets first, rental properties, side businesses, before spending on luxuries. This simple plan, if followed, can set anyone on the path to financial freedom. As Robert's journey was just beginning, his mind filled with new ideas and hope. The lessons from Rich Dad opened his eyes to a new world, a world where money worked for him, where he could build real wealth, and where financial freedom was possible for anyone willing to learn. But Robert's story doesn't end here. This is only the beginning. As Robert began applying Rich Dad's first lessons about money, something incredible started to happen inside him. He learned that one of the most important rules of building wealth was simple but powerful: reinvest your profits. This was a new idea for Robert. He had always thought that when you earned money, you spent it on bills, on fun, on what you needed or wanted now. But Rich Dad taught him differently. Don't spend the money you earn from your investments. Instead, reinvest it. Let your money work for you, growing faster and faster with time. Robert started to see money not as something to be spent immediately, but as a tool to create even more money. This shift changed everything. He began looking for opportunities to invest, no matter how small. A little money here, a small investment there, and over time, his mindset moved from scarcity, worrying about having enough, to abundance, believing in growth and possibilities. With every step, Rich Dad's lessons were changing Robert's life, slowly but surely. Then, one day, Rich Dad told Robert something surprising. To become wealthy, you must first learn how to control your emotions. Robert was puzzled. "What do emotions have to do with money?" he asked. Rich Dad smiled warmly and said, "Everything." He explained that most people let two powerful emotions, fear and greed, control their financial decisions. And these emotions are what keep most people poor. First, he spoke about fear. Fear drives people to stay stuck in jobs they hate. They fear not having enough money to pay bills, so they settle for the safety of a paycheck instead of taking risks to create real wealth. This fear traps them in the rat race. Rich Dad gave a clear example. Imagine someone who dreams of starting their own business but never takes the step. Why? Because they're afraid of failing, afraid of losing money, or afraid of what others might think. So instead of trying, they stay in a job that barely covers their expenses, never enough to thrive, only enough to survive. But then Rich Dad added, "The rich feel fear too, but they don't let it stop them. They understand fear is normal, but action is what matters. If you want to succeed, you must feel the fear and move forward anyway." Next, Rich Dad talked about greed. Greed makes people believe that having more money will bring happiness. They think, if I buy this expensive car, I'll feel successful. If I own that big house, people will respect me. But in reality, these things only add more expenses and stress. True happiness, Rich Dad said, doesn't come from owning things. It comes from freedom. The freedom to do what you love and spend time with the people you care about. And that freedom comes from building assets, not buying liabilities. Rich Dad told Robert, if you want to control your emotions, you need one thing: knowledge. He explained how most people fear money simply because they don't understand it. They avoid investing because it feels risky. They don't understand taxes, so they overpay. They don't know how to build wealth, so they stay stuck. Rich Dad encouraged Robert to start learning about 3 main areas: investments, understanding stocks, real estate, and other ways to grow money. Taxes, learning how the rich legally pay less tax using smart strategies. The market, knowing when to buy and when to sell. Knowledge, Rich Dad said, gives you power over fear. One of the most powerful lessons Robert learned was to stop thinking like a consumer and start thinking like an investor. Rich Dad explained it this way. Imagine you earn $1,000. A consumer spends that money on clothes, gadgets, or entertainment. An investor asks, how can I use this $1,000 to make more money? They might buy stocks, start a small business, or invest in a course to learn new skills. Over time, the investor's money grows while the consumer's money disappears. Rich. Dad also taught Robert to spot opportunities others miss. Most people are too busy working or spending to notice the chances around them. The rich are always looking for ways to grow their wealth. He gave Robert an exercise. When you walk down the street, don't just look at the shops. Ask yourself, how could I own one of these? What does this business need to succeed? Train your mind to think like an owner, not just a customer. Robert started practicing this every day. Soon, he noticed things he hadn't seen before. A small cafe for sale, an old house that could be renovated and rented out, even ideas for websites that could grow into businesses. Of course, Robert also faced doubts from others and even himself. People told him he was too young to invest or that it was too risky. His poor dad warned him to focus on a safe job instead of chasing risky dreams. Rich Dad gave Robert the best advice. People will always criticize what they don't understand. But they are speaking from their own fears, not yours. If you listen to them, you'll end up stuck like them in the rat race. Rich Dad encouraged Robert to stay focused and surround himself with like-minded people who believed in growth and success. He told Robert, you don't have to start big. Small wins are the best way to build confidence. He shared a story of a young woman who wanted to start investing, but had only $50. Instead of waiting to save a large amount, she began buying shares in small companies. Over time, her investments grew, and she gained the confidence to take bigger risks. Success, Rich Dad said, is built step by step. Each small win gives you courage to aim higher. Rich Dad also emphasized the power of daily habits in building wealth. Your habits determine your future, he said. If you save and invest a little every month, it will grow over time. But if you spend everything you earn, you'll stay stuck. He recommended 2 simple but powerful habits. Pay yourself first. Set aside a portion of your income for savings or investments before paying any bills or expenses. Track your progress. Keep a journal of your financial growth. Seeing your progress will motivate you to keep going. Rich Dad warned Robert about a common trap: impatience. Most people give up because they don't see results quickly, he said. They expect to become rich overnight, but building wealth takes time, discipline, and consistency. He gave a beautiful metaphor. When you plant a seed, you don't see results immediately. You have to water it, protect it from pests, and wait. Over time, it grows into a strong tree that provides fruit for years. Money is a tool, not the goal, Rich Dad continued. The goal is freedom, the freedom to live life on your own terms, follow your passions, and help others. After many lessons, Rich Dad told Robert, "Now you're ready for the most important truth about becoming wealthy. Success is not about luck or talent. It's about mindset, hard work, and action." Robert leaned in closer, eager to hear more. Rich. Dad explained that many people dream of becoming rich, but very few take action. They wait for the perfect time, the perfect opportunity, or the perfect idea. But the truth is, there is no perfect time. The best time to start is now. He gave Robert a simple example. Imagine 2 friends. One says, "I'll start saving and investing when I make more money." The other starts small, saving just $10 a week. 10 years later, the second friend has built a fortune, while the first is still waiting for the right time. Opportunities are everywhere, Rich Dad said, but only those who act on them see results. Don't wait until you're ready. Start with what you have. Rich Dad also taught Robert that failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of the journey. He shared a story about a businessman who started 5 companies. All failed. People laughed at him and called him a fool. But he didn't give up. On his 6th attempt, he built a wildly successful company that changed his life. Do you think he would have succeeded if he stopped after his first failure? Rich Dad asked. Robert shook his head. Rich Dad emphasized the importance of self-discipline in financial freedom. It's easy to spend money, but it takes discipline to save and invest it. Always pay yourself first, even if you have bills or debts. This habit forces you to be creative and resourceful with the rest of your money, he explained. It also builds the discipline you need to grow your wealth. Rich Dad noticed, many people let doubt stop them from pursuing their dreams. Your thoughts create your reality, he told Robert. If you focus on your fears, you'll find reasons to fail. But if you focus on your dreams, you'll find ways to succeed. As their lessons came to an end, Rich Dad shared one final surprising piece of advice. The richest people are those who give back. Robert was confused. How does giving make you richer? He asked. Rich Dad explained that when you help others, you create value. whether it's sharing knowledge, mentoring, or donating to a cause. Giving back multiplies your success, brings fulfillment, and strengthens your network, which often leads to even greater opportunities. He told Robert. A story about a wealthy man who started a scholarship fund for underprivileged students. Not only did this change hundreds of lives, but it also brought the man immense joy and recognition, opening doors to new partnerships and businesses. Rich Dad's last piece of advice was simple but powerful. The moment you stop learning, you stop growing. Years later, Robert looked back on his journey and realized how Rich Dad's lessons had transformed his life. He had built wealth, not just in money, but in freedom, confidence, and the ability to help others. Robert shared this message with the world. No matter where you are in life, you have the power to change your future. It doesn't matter if you're starting with nothing. What matters is your mindset and your willingness to take action. Wealth, he realized, is not just about money. It's about creating a life where you can follow your passions, help others, and live without regrets. So, as you finish this story, remember this. Your journey to financial freedom begins today. Start small. Stay consistent. Learn from your failures. Dream big. And never, ever give up. Because the only limit to your success is the limit you place on yourself. The world is full of opportunities waiting for you to take the first step. Your time is now. Make it count. Outro. If you enjoyed this story and want more powerful lessons that can transform your mindset and your life, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Mindset English. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an update, and please comment below. What's the first small step you will take today toward your financial freedom? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, your journey to success is a marathon,